All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Learning Quick. Super excited to have Jessica Chan join today to talk about content creation and specifically going full time with content creation, which is incredibly exciting for me. So I'm thrilled to get into that and have you on. Do you want to give people a little bit of an intro to who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into it?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. But yes, I'm Jessica Chan. I run the Coder YouTube channel, and I'm currently a content creator. But I worked as a web developer for the past 8 years, working mainly in advertising and marketing. So,
Sweet. Do you feel like an additional level of pride for your like official title to be content creator? Like I just feel like that's such a cool thing to be able to say.
yeah, well, I actually feel a little bit of, I'm not sure if shame is the right word, but it's like, ooh, I'm an influencer, I'm a content creator. So I feel like I have to follow it up with like, I actually did work in the field as a web developer
Yeah.
for several years to be like, I do have the practical experience.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and I think I guess I guess you could have really successful YouTube channels in this industry with not, although I would imagine like most people to be able to create content from a technical perspective that people respect, enjoy, and like want to come back for more, I would imagine like that's kind of a requirement is you have the experience to be able to share with people. So I certainly don't think that you don't have that experience. I know that that's a combination and an enabler to have success and become a full-time um, content creator. There
Yeah.
was I'll kick off a question, which I think we talked about this in the Twitter space, but Cute Guy Canal asked about your transition from job to full time content creation in the beginning weeks, and maybe you can start us a little bit before that of like what was your thought process in deciding maybe you were ready to do that, and then what were those first couple of weeks like after you actually made the transition?
Yeah. So I think being a full-time content creator was always my goal. I started Coder back in 2017. So it's been like 4 or 5 years. So it has been something I've been working towards. So it's been pretty awesome that I am able to be there now.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, the first few weeks of quitting. So there's a little bit of a transition. So I've actually been contracting part-time, quarter time for my former employer. So it hasn't been like a complete clean break. But it definitely did feel different the first few weeks after, just being like, oh, wow, I don't have to be online on Slack at 9 a.m. every day. So for some reason, just that not having to be on Slack and be available, like lifted a lot of, I think, slight stress that was on my shoulders before then, because it's like I'd be doing some work, and then also in the evenings and on the weekends I'd be trying to make content. So it was nice to feel like my first priority is now coder, and then my second priority is working contracting. So it's been a transition for sure.
Yeah, I bet it's got a high level of freeness that comes with it of just, and I guess that can be kind of intimidating too of like now that you have the majority of your time on something that you completely own, it's completely free, right? But I imagine that is a little bit intimidating too, and maybe like I don't know, have you gotten to the point where you've like really structured your days and weeks and given yourself some boundaries, or does it just kind of come pretty naturally, the stuff you work on, because you're already so excited about working on it anyway?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm probably, I could be better at structuring my day in terms of setting a schedule and, even waking up at a certain time every day. But I think I know what's always coming up next, in terms of what videos or what projects I'm working on. I'm currently trying to finish my course on how to build a responsive website. So it's like I have these things that I know I need to do. So I just kind of, yeah, I feel excited and motivated enough to work on those things during a day. But yeah, it's definitely, I think, doing something that's just your own is definitely freeing, sometimes in an intimidating way.
Yep.
Yeah, I think yeah, you just got to get used to it, I think, and give yourself time and don't feel guilty about, not doing 10 things in one day, but just try to, just keep working on the next thing that you want to complete.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too because it's still a gradual progression. Like just because you have all of a sudden a lot more time to work on it, it doesn't mean you're able to do all the things that you want to right up front. Like you still have to kind of build up to those things, whatever they are. And I posted on Twitter about this, about my greatest weakness if I were asked in an interview. And it's like I'm a 90% person. Like I love to start a new project and I love to work on it up until like 90%. And then those last 10% of details, like video editing, I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm kind of done with it. But it still takes time to get to that 90% of any of those projects too. So even if you have a lot more time, it doesn't mean that you all of a sudden are able to do it all overnight. There was a
exactly.
question from Robert Tables. When you started, were you doing, and I think we talked about this on the Twitter space as well, but when you started, were you doing more written content or video content?
I first started out Coder Coder as just a blog. So yeah, it was just written content first for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something. And I did put out one YouTube video at the very, very beginning. If you look at my channel, I can go all the way to the end. And this is a shameful, see how far I've come type thing. But I did
Yeah.
have one video for a long time, but I didn't do YouTube until I think 2019 was when we started making more consistent videos on YouTube. So yeah, but the goal is to do everything, I think.
Yeah. That's I wish I did more written content. It doesn't come as naturally for me. Like it's really easy after having done so many videos to just like turn the camera on and start talking or start writing some code. Writing is just a little bit different. So that's one of the things that
Mhm.
I won't say slacked and because it's not a bad thing, right? Like we all only have so much time. But I do wish at some points I had done more. Just want to share a comment in the chat from the Memphis handle. They said, "Just want to say, Jessica, thanks for making such amazing videos. They are clear and easy to follow all the way. You are amazing." I assume we'll probably have lots of sprinkled in supportive and appreciative comments in the chat as we go. Another
Yeah, thank you.
question, yeah. Another question for Robert Tables. I appreciate watching people learn things they don't know, which streaming is good for. So, like, you just give yourself an opportunity to be kind of vulnerable and try stuff out and kind of figure it out with people live. But produced content seems to always project ultimate competence. So, there's like this live streaming is like completely like we're kind of figuring out together. The final product on a YouTube video is like, oh, this person obviously knows everything they're doing, which couldn't be further from the truth. And the question is there maybe room for anything in the middle? And I think that's maybe kind of a
Yeah.
tough question, but any thoughts on like how raw live streams can be versus how finished and produced final videos on YouTube can be?
Yeah, I actually think that I'm in the middle of that because I like right now I just finished a live sort of live coding, not really, but they're produced videos on YouTube, but it was me building this project and I kept in all the parts where I was stuck or had to like research something on DuckDuckGo or look up blog posts and like try things out and like not have it work. And then finally figured it out at the end. Like I think I spent this past video, I spent maybe 30 minutes trying to figure out the layout of this dark and light toggle UI.
Nice.
So it's but I do agree that I include that stuff because in most tutorials you just see the person just like and like it's all done, it works the first time, and like that's not at all what being a real life web developer is
Hmm.
like. So I deliberately try to include stuff like that in some of my videos.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I like live streams for that particular reason. Like I think it's just it helps and fight imposter syndrome a lot for people as they watch like who they think a senior developer is or a very experienced
Mhm.
developer or like a perfect developer, and they're like, yeah, they're just kind of figuring it out, like both of us. So I try to, or like all of us. So I leave some of the stuff in my videos as well. It's a tough balance because when I'm looking when I'm like watching a YouTube video, unless it's like a bigger hour-long tutorial or series or something, like I'm trying to be like really quick in terms of learning, like I want to know how to do this one thing. So I'm usually looking for a pretty streamlined thing. So there's this balance of like leaving in a few of those so people understand, hey, we're not all perfect. Here's how you could debug this. Here's where you might look if something goes wrong, while also giving them like that streamlined experience. So it's a tough balance. But I will say, like, if you looked at the raw footage of videos, because I just record in one take and then edit after. If you looked at the raw footage versus the final product, there's a big difference in almost every video I do of how much stuff I end up cutting out. Here's a tough one. This is not necessarily content creation, or maybe you could take it this way. So it's a little bit of put you on the spot. And I'll answer first if it would be helpful, so you can let me know. What
Okay.
is the one mistake that you would want to change when you were starting to learn to code? So anything like you wish you would have
Huh.
known then, or would have done differently?
Let me think. Do you want to answer first,
Yeah,
and
I can
I'll
do
try to
that.
think of
Yeah,
an answer?
sure. Um, so do you have a computer science degree? Are you like taught
I
outside
don't.
of? Okay. How did you
I,
learn,
I
by the
went.
way?
I got a degree in photography.
Sweet.
But I just sort of taught myself HTML and CSS when I was in high school because I wanted to make snowboarding web pages on GeoCities.
Nice.
It sort of kind of went from there. Like I always loved building website
Yeah.
stuff, but it just didn't get into it as a career until later on.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, so the self-taught route, I feel like I resonate much more with that for a reason I'll get into in a second. But I have a computer science degree, a 4-year degree, and that was completely by like not random, but I just picked something. I didn't know any better. I didn't know what computer science was. I'd never written any code. And so what I did was I just treated the degree like school, right? Like I got good grades, I passed tests, I turned in homework. But I didn't really, most of the time, 95% of the time, I didn't really appreciate what I was doing in terms of like looking at it like I could make this super personal. Like I could use this to build whatever I want. And I did that one time where I wanted to learn Android development and I built a Harry Potter trivia app. And it was just something I was really passionate about. And I wish I had embraced more of that mindset. Like I wish I would have been excited about the stuff I was learning versus just focused on getting good grades. I wish I would have realized how amazing like YouTube could be as a resource, or how like I don't have to just focus on the textbook that they give us. Like I can go out there and learn things on my own. So I wish I would have had like a little bit broader perspective and appreciation for what I was learning than just getting good grades. Because at the end of the day, and I've talked about this a lot, like I bombed a few technical interviews because I just really wasn't prepared in the way that I should have been, having finished my 4-year degree.
Nice. That's a great answer. Um, I think honestly, I kind of wish that I'd gotten into web development as a career earlier on, but
Hmm.
um, I sort of struggled with like some depression and stuff in my 20s. Like after I graduated from college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career. So I just
Hmm.
did these like random temp jobs, just enough to pay the bills. Like I was kind of living paycheck to paycheck, stuff like that. But I sort of fell into web development from one of these like sort of random jobs that they ended up teaching me some SQL, .NET programming. So I
Nice.
kind of got into it from there. So I worked at that job for a couple of years, and then by that time I was able to get enough skills that I could apply and get like an actual like web developer job. So I don't know if I would actually change anything, but I do sometimes look back and be like, man, like if I just gotten into this 10 years earlier, like where would I be now? Like, I don't know.
Yep.
Cause I think I started my first formal web developer job was when I was like in my late 20s. So, but again,
Yeah.
it's like maybe it's a good story for people to hear because you don't have to get into it right, when you're like 16 years old and coding 24/7, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So it's definitely possible to get into the field later on in life.
Absolutely. We've got conveniently a perfect example of this. One Syrian who's in the chat, who's got the next question that I will ask, is from Memphis. He's local, and I actually don't know his specific age, but older than 30, and transitioned and ended up working with me at FedEx, and is still working at FedEx as a software developer, having been in like the food and hospitality industry for years. And he's been always for me the perfect example of like how to learn, how to be involved in community, and how to provide value and build relationships, like first and foremost. And then that has led to a lot of, I think, opportunities for him, which is pretty neat for that stuff to work out. I
That's
don't, did you
awesome.
notice the lights come on? Have you seen this
Yeah.
before? Okay.
Is that a Twitch thing?
Yeah, it is. So I've got a Twitch bot set up to listen for redemptions, and they can turn them on. They can change colors. I still want to do like more of this stuff, but yeah, that's one of them that I have involved. By
That's
the
awesome.
way, for people, let me try to catch up on chat really quick. Ellie or Eli Lucas, subscribe for Prime. Thank you. Do I have? Let me see. You won't be able to hear this, Jessica, but I've got some. There it is. Clap sound effects that I think will come through on the stream. So thank you. I appreciate that. First time chat from Weston. Welcome. Thanks for being here and hanging out. We had a comment from someone that said that from Nate Dunn said, yeah, both are great. I think appreciating, well, actually, I'm not sure. I assume this is appreciating both of our YouTube channels, but now it may have been in response to part of our conversation. Anyway, um, let's go back to so the question from one Syrian who is Lawrence. He's local here in Memphis. The question is, how did you blow up on YouTube so fast? And we kind of chatted about this a little bit. Like, I think we both had the luxury or the benefit of being able to be connected to people who have done it before us and kind of ride their coattails a little bit, or like just kind of look at the things that they're doing to be successful with YouTube content. But any thoughts on like what was such a big what's a propellant whatever what how did your YouTube channel grow so
Catalyst.
quickly? Yeah, catalyst, that's a good word.
Um, yeah. I guess it depends on what your definition of fast is, right? Because I
Hmm.
think I started Coder back in 2017. I started posting more consistently in 2019. And it took a year and a half from the beginning of 2019 to when my channel like started blowing up, I guess, in mid 2020. So it's like, that's a year and a half of putting out a lot of content, not necessarily seeing a ton of results, seeing like some slow growth. But I think, yeah, it's definitely important to keep in mind that if you do want to get into content creation on YouTube, it's going to take you like 1 to 2 years before you see any substantial growth. But I think in terms of, if there's people listening who want to get into this, I think maybe some tips would be figure out what your audience is. So, for example, my audience is beginner web developers, and I try to share the tips and tricks that you might not see on other tutorials, just little things that kind of slip through the cracks, but can be very confusing when you're a beginner. Mainly front end, HTML, CSS, SAS. I love SAS. Um, and then just making content that will help your audience and solve some kind of pain point that they have. And then just try to make content consistently, try to learn from your mistakes or just watch past videos, see the areas that you can improve on, and then keep going. But it's definitely a lot of work. There's a lot of different areas involved. It's not just, it's like education, it's video editing, it's designing thumbnails is probably one of the most important skills to improve when you're a YouTuber so that you get more clicks. It's marketing, social media. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I think it just takes time to kind of figure out how they all work together.
Yeah, that I think it's easy to forget a couple of things. One, how many different moving parts there are of like you have to get better at all of those things to help grow your channel. It also just takes time, and there's the idea of like the overnight celebrity or overnight success story or whatever like is almost never an actual overnight thing. And so you mentioned you started in 2017 and then took it more seriously in 19. I actually started in 2014, I think, maybe even I'll have to go back and check that, but somewhere around then is when I started creating YouTube videos for on my channel when I was working at Microsoft. I didn't do it for a while, and I think I started seriously again in either 2018 or 19 as well. And so when I like was getting back into it, like I was seeing other people have like these really big spikes, and I didn't see that for a long time up until really this past year. And I only say that to me to for other people to know like how much time and effort I had put in up until that point. And now it seems like it's really ramping up. But it does take that consistency. It does take like learning about the different aspects of what makes YouTube videos good and what makes it them appealing for people to actually come in and watch. And you mentioned a big part of that is the thumbnails. And
Yeah.
Pokeballs, who's in the chat, asked the specific question: Who makes the nifty graphics on the Coder channel? Which I will like first and foremost say they are amazing. I get entertained at like everyone that I see. I think they're some of the best ones that are out there. But who makes those graphics?
So, yeah, I have an in-house designer, video editor, animator. My husband, he's super experienced. I think he's worked for 10 years in the video industry, and then he just also did design and animation on the side as well. But he's super skilled in the design, the After Effects animation, stuff like that. So I definitely have a very, very unfair advantage that I don't have to pay an external contractor to do that kind of stuff for me. So
Yep. Well, it works out great, I think. There's a follow-up question from Eric in the chat. He says that you've mentioned in the past that you worked with your husband on editing. Has that changed at all after going full time? I think the answer is no. Like you still kind of have the same, um, not, I was going to say relationship, like working relationship in terms of him working on the editing. That is pretty much the same.
Yeah. So we both don't have full-time jobs at companies.
Hmm,
But we're both sort of like he does some freelancing. I'm still doing a little bit of contracting, maybe. But both of our main focus now is on Coder, which has been really awesome.
cool. That is really sweet. I I think I can say this. Um, I've told like a handful of people, but my wife is going to start working at Aussie Road next week on the same team doing events and sponsorships. And
Dang.
I am like over the moon. Is that the right thing? Like super thrilled about it. She is too. She's really excited. So we will both be working from home and we'll both be working on the same team from home. So as much time as we already spend together, we will spend infinitely more time together going forward.
That's cool. It can be really awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah, to work with your person.
Yep. Yeah, we're both super excited about it. Cute guy Canal commented, I think, back in our conversation about what we wish maybe we would have done differently in learning, and he said, wish he would have researched a little bit more before jumping into coding, so I could have had a little bit more knowledge of what I could do and make a good roadmap. And I think as
Hmm.
people have asked like how to get started, the first thing I say, like free code camp obviously is like one of the best resources that are out there. So obviously that one, but in general, there's so much free content and you can just go on YouTube and search. Like just find whatever free content you can find and follow it and then just see what you think. Like and that can help open your mind to like different types of things that you might be able to do with programming. It might be able to lead you to other resources. Maybe then you decide it's worth it to go through a boot camp if it makes sense for people. But yeah, there's so many good resources out there for people to get started that you can definitely like give it a really good shot to see if it's something you're interested in and learn more about what sort of career opportunities there are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I recommend Free Code Camp as the first thing for people who ask me about where to start because it's free. You can't beat free.
Yep, absolutely. And that also goes. I don't know. Do you use YouTube for learning any other hobbies? Like I've kind of gotten into like building things and woodworking and a few other random things. And you can do all these things
Cool.
on YouTube. Do you use it for any other sort of activities?
I use it sometimes for if I'm trying to learn how to cook something new. So like
Hmm.
recipes sometimes. But yeah, just
Nice.
random hobbies like gardening, fixing your toilet. I
Yep.
think yeah, lots of home research stuff. My husband's been doing a lot of that.
Yep. I um I don't feel like changing the camera angle, but actually I guess I will. Give me I think I can do this. No, I won't. I don't think I have it set up for when I have a guest, or do I? I can't remember. Anyway, I like completely remodeled this closet in here, and like I bought a main thing from IKEA and then built shelves around it that I'm pretty proud
Nice.
of. So that was a lot of. It's not fully finished, but it's pretty close. But that was a lot of watching YouTube videos as well. It's pretty amazing, I think. What
It really is.
Yeah. Um, Brian, who is a friend of mine as well, he was a TA for the boot camp that I taught through Launch Code that ended in the summer. Brian is commenting who he creates awesome content as well. That timeline is great to hear. He's really struggled mentally thinking I'm not doing good enough, I think, in terms of like growth and that sort of stuff. And like, I want to be really honest about this with people because I think it's important for them to get this perspective. Like I've had a lot of jealousy and self-doubt of watching other people have growth and not really knowing how that would translate to myself and my channel and not knowing if it would at all. And I've heard so many people talk about like the spikes that you have on YouTube, like a video going viral or whatever, is like really what makes or breaks you. And I'd heard that for years before I
Mm.
ever saw that. So I've like just full transparency, like I've really struggled with that in the past as well. I feel much more comfortable. Um, I think with myself as a content creator and like my rate of growth, if that makes sense, in comparison to others. but it's been like several years that I had been creating content before I saw like any of the more exponential growth versus just like the stereotypical kind of slow climb.
Yeah. And I will say, I think the spikes definitely help, but I think they're not mandatory in order to grow on YouTube. Because I know some channels in the Discord, they've shared that they're pretty big now, but they never had spikes for the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or whatever.
Hmm.
But they just had this really slow, steady growth. So don't feel like you need to have some kind of viral hit in order to grow. But yeah, it's hard to not keep reloading your analytics and being like, oh, and okay, this is gonna be one rant about
Yeah, go
YouTube,
for
but
it.
like
Yeah.
YouTube Studio, they rank all your videos in terms of how they stack up against each other in the first, however
Yep.
long time it's been since you released your latest video. So it's like, oh no, my new video was like 9 out of 10 or like 10 out of 10. And
Hmm.
that's actually been happening to me because I have been really lucky and gotten some viral videos. So now every single video I make from now until forever is going to be compared against these viral videos. And like, that's not possible.
Hmm.
So I actually installed this extension on Firefox to hide that panel when I
Did you
load YouTube
really?
Studio because yeah, it's
That's
just not
hilarious.
helpful
Yeah.
at all.
Hmm.
So I think I don't like the yeah comparing yourself either to other people or even to your
Hmm.
own past like achievements or whatever can be not great mentally. So I think it's good to try to separate yourself from that as much as possible.
Yeah, I've kind of leaned like slightly different. I've kind of leaned into comparisons with myself
Mm,
and with others, but I'm like very protective of myself mentally when I do that. Like I said, I'm
that's
much
good.
more comfortable in comparing myself. So now I just look at it as like, what are other people doing? What's working? What can I learn from it? And we talked about this, I think, before we went live. Like I never would have thought that some of this growth was possible without having seen other people do it too. But yeah, it
For sure.
does. Like I've struggled with that a lot, and it's like it's something that I feel like now I'm in a pretty good place of being able to like comfortably compare and look and just try to use it as a learning opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think comparing yourself can be good. It can help you, like constructive criticism. But yeah, I think if it's important to keep your own sort of mental health in mind
Hmm.
when you do stuff like that. So yes,
Yeah, and for all the things that we can say, either one of us here on how we handle that and how that's changed, that obviously like depends on the person as well. So if you respond in a different way, if you have a different take, whatever works for you individually, to make sure that that's something that's really important to you. And I think you have to constantly check in for yourself, not speaking to you, to the general audience here. um Question from I forget, and I think I've done this before. It's either Ellie or Eli. I apologize. Lucas, do you have any tips on setting up your screen for recording, like resolution and such, as it looks like you have a widescreen? So I guess first, do you have multiple monitors? Do you have a widescreen? What's your setup look like there?
yeah, sorry, some my lawn's
Uh,
there's someone mowing the lawn nearby, so I apologize if you can hear that.
no
But in
worries.
terms of setup, I have a laptop and then I have a ultra wide curved 34-inch screen that I when I record my screen, I have to make the window like not be the whole screen so that it
Hmm.
fits on OBS.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't. Did I answer that question right? Sorry, I was kind of distracted by the lawnmower.
No worries. And I can like barely hear it, but it's not coming through very much. Yeah, I think so. So you got your ultra wide monitor. Some of maybe one of the struggles that you're saying, which I've kind of questioned from my end, is like you can't have your screens take up the whole screen. So you kind of position them in certain dimensions, I imagine. Do you have any tools that help you set up like here's a frame for what 1080p looks like, and I can fit it into that frame? Or do you have any tools to help you like position your windows like that?
No, I don't. I just kind of open Streamlabs OBS and then just manually make the window fit. So
Mm,
it's like filling up the whole thing.
cool. Okay.
So
Yeah,
very,
makes
very
sense.
in that or not very exact.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how I am with doing, like, grabbing your video or the guest video on Zoom. Is I'm just literally clipping it out of that, and like sometimes I don't position the Zoom window exactly the same, so I have to like go and get it and tweak it. Um, Yeah, so the flip side of that, if people are curious, I have two relatively big monitors side by side. They're 27 inches, and then I have my laptop down here. So I use the screen on my laptop as well, and then have two different monitors. The good thing for me, and this is why I haven't looked into really getting a ultra wide monitor, is I just do all of my windows full screen on my monitors, and I don't have to worry about like resolution or positioning or anything. So that's been something that's worked out well for me. But I've heard tons of people just like absolutely rave about like you have to get an ultra wide monitor because they're so happy with it.
I love mine.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been really nice.
Yeah. Um, Follow up question from Robert Tables. Do you think the move to remote work and the new skills tech required could open more people's eyes to the potential to be self-employed or to do maybe it's content creation, maybe it's building your own business, maybe it's any combination of that, but being self-employed where you're kind of responsible for your employment and working for yourself from home?
I think so. I mean, it does. I did work remotely for the past five years, I'd say. So I think having that, not having to go into a physical building, like you gain a lot of time not having the commute, like an hour each way or however long it is for you. So that frees up more time that you can work on side projects if you're trying to. But yeah, I do think that in general, this whole move to remote with the pandemic has helped people think about what else is possible. So yeah, I think it's we're in a very interesting time.
I'm right there with you. There's I hate to be the person that brings up this perspective, but like with COVID, one of the benefits in the midst of like so many negatives is like I feel like we've become more creative on how we work as like culturally, country, world. More people are working from home. More companies are now realizing that hey, like a lot of cultures never would have thought it was possible to work from home, but now that they're seeing it be successful, they're kind of open to the opportunities more. I think we're also seeing more people become content creators, and I think that's because it's never been as accessible as it has. Like it's never been as accessible now. Am I saying this right? It's more accessible now than it ever has been before. So you're seeing more people start to create content. You're seeing more people grow as content creators, and that growth then leads to opportunities like doing that full time. So I'm right there with you that I think we'll definitely see more people work for themselves in some capacity, um, just as we go forward in time. I feel like my wording is not not super great today, but I think we'll see more and more people doing that based on it's never been easier and more accessible to get started. Not saying it's easy, it's just easier and there's more opportunities and it's more accessible than it's ever been. Um, Penidax asked what monitors I have. So it's two 27-inch monitors. They're LG brand. I couldn't tell you anything more specific than that, unfortunately, but they work really well. Will Johnson just joined in the chat, who is a new teammate at Auth0. I don't know if you follow Will, Jessica, but he started with Auth0 last Monday, this Monday. Time flies. It's either been a week or 2 weeks. Um, so super
Awesome.
excited to have him, and he's hanging out in the chat as well. And Avnish asked Will how his new job is going. So I'll let oh, he says it's going good. James is a great coworker. Will and I will actually get to see each other in person at a conference in Kansas City in a couple weeks, which is very exciting.
Wow, exciting.
Yeah. Another question from Robert Tables. Knowledge experience is valuable. It's required to progress in your industry, but aren't we seeing even more value attached to the ability to share and teach? So getting into the idea of content creation, courses, consulting. Maybe I'll start with did was your ability to teach from a YouTube perspective or just to communicate technical concepts, did you see that influence your career like in your full-time job before you left?
In some degree, I'd say. I think that I seem to enjoy documentation a little bit more than some of my coworkers when I was working. And I think it did benefit me being able to explain technical things to people who aren't developers on my team, because that's actually a very important skill
Mhm.
when you're working on a team at a company. So it wasn't that I wasn't really doing any kind of like formal education type stuff at my job, but I think the sort of skills there definitely carry over to making content on YouTube.
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing for me. I when I was working at FedEx, I ended up getting a skip level promotion, which like doesn't really happen, to be perfectly honest. Like I don't know of anyone else that had happened for, and if so, like just not very frequently. And I think a big part of that was I was able to show like the ability to write code with the rest of the team, like on par with everyone else. But I think a lot of it came from my ability to communicate and having that teaching mindset of I could onboard new developers. I really enjoyed working with entry level developers. I really enjoyed teaching, and that level of communication and kind of like translating to leadership of being able to take in like here's a project. How do we communicate what we're doing down to individual people? I think that was a really big part of my success, specifically there, but then in other parts of my career as well. And it's kind of interesting how much impact I think the like I feel like it's a negative connotation, but soft skills, like how much impact soft skills can have on your career. So I've always said recording YouTube videos, you get better at speaking, you get better at teaching, you get more comfortable being on camera, which may or may not be something that is necessary for a job. And then the other aspect of that is writing blog posts is more or less like writing documentation, right? So you're better able to document things for a team. And a lot of people, like you said, don't aren't particularly interested in writing documentation or doing documentation well. So I think there's tons of benefits that come along with that.
Yeah. And I would actually argue that soft skills are going to be more important for your career than the hard skills because if you have the ability to learn stuff, if you feel comfortable learning new skills, like you're always going to be able to learn a new programming language or framework or whatever, depending on your company. But the soft skills are the ones that are a little harder to learn, I think.
Hmm.
Sometimes just learning how to communicate and stuff like that.
Yep, agreed. I'm right there with you on that too. Um, Will Johnson says that he loves your Instagram account, by the way.
Thank
Um,
you.
yep. And then Eric asks, have you ever thought about getting into developer advocacy? Seems like a lot of content creators have taken that role. There is a lot of overlap, right? Like I do YouTube videos for Auth0, I do YouTube videos on my personal channel, Twitter Spaces, that sort of stuff. Have you ever thought about doing developer relations or being a developer advocate before you
I
went full
think,
time for content?
yeah. Um, I think I kind of made the jump before I really learned about developer advocates and stuff like that. I think if I at some point in the future for some reason have to go back to getting a company job, I would probably consider being a developer advocate pretty highly. I think right now I'm not really looking for that kind of position, but I think it's an awesome opportunity for content creators, and I would say that like almost half the developers I know who have coding YouTube channels are developer advocates. So I think it's great that companies are seeing that this is a really efficient way of getting the word out about their product and stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's cool because there's so much overlap, and like part of the struggle with it can be like how do you balance like your personal content, your personal brand with what you do for a company. And one of the really cool benefits is like if I spend my personal time learning something about creating YouTube videos, that makes me better at my job. And if I learn something that makes me better at doing YouTube videos for my job, that makes me better at personal content creation as well. So like there is like some separation that has to go into it, but it also they go hand in hand and they both kind of benefit each other. Going back to like college and what I wish I would have not necessarily done differently, but known is there's more than just writing code 40 hours a week as a software developer. And that's like there's I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there's more than just that specific type of opportunity, something like developer relations. And I looked into my role at Microsoft. I actually applied for two different roles that I had interviews for and didn't get. And they asked me, based on some of my answers, what I thought about technical evangelist, which I had never heard of. So I was like extremely fortunate to even like stumble across that as an opportunity, but everything else was just software developer. And I think one of the benefits of so many people creating content is people are starting to see one, the benefit, they're seeing the ability to do it, and then they're seeing the ability with developer advocates to turn that into a job and a career, which I think is pretty cool. Um, so I hope that there is continued awareness of there's more opportunities than just writing code 40 hours a week. Robert Tables says I like to use the word human skills instead of soft skills,
Mm.
but it's just terminology. The latter seems to have been tarnished a bit. Yeah, I think like it's just terminology, but I think like being picky about the words we use and the impact that they have is a good thing. So I like that. The one downside I would think is if you communicate that to someone and they've never heard it used that way, and then they're confused. But then you could just have the conversation to clarify what you're talking about.
For sure.
I was kind of curious. We talked a little bit about this of like how much different stuff goes into YouTube as a whole or content creation as a whole.
Yeah.
What about the business side? Like what are some of the business type things that you have to do or take care of or maintain that people probably aren't thinking about when they watch a YouTube video or see your face as a content creator?
Yeah. I would say the most important business thing is that my husband and I have an accountant. We have a CPA who does our taxes and stuff. So when you make money on your own, like you don't have a W-2 or whatever, or 1099, you need to make quarterly estimated payments. This is for the US,
Hmm.
but it's very important to do that. Otherwise, you're going to get a huge bill from the IRS 5 years down the road where you have to pay them a lot of money. So I would say getting your finances um, in order, either with an accountant or just being on top of it yourself, is like super important. But aside from that, the money management thing, I think there's a lot of, I don't know if this is what you were thinking, but like I could talk about different ways of monetization and making
Yeah,
money off of YouTube.
sure. Yeah.
So easiest way is, of course, ads, YouTube ads. YouTube makes it pretty easy to get that set up once you've hit, I think it's 4,000 hours of watch time. But you don't make very much money from it. So, for example, my average RPM, which is how much money I make through views, is like $3 per 1,000 views. So if 1,000 people watch my video, I make $3. And you can't really, yeah, you would have to get millions of views. So I think I just made this calculation just for fun, but let's say I wanted to make $10,000 a month. If I made that money only from ads, I would have to get over 3 million views per month on my
A
YouTube
month.
channel, which is
Okay.
like, I think 10 times more than I'm getting now. So
Hmm.
it's almost impossible to make a full-time living from ads. So what other people do, of course, on YouTube is sponsors. So you can get sponsors, companies that you work with to, you'll either give them a quick shout out at the beginning of the video, or they could pay for a dedicated video where you're sort of trying out the product and, demonstrating it throughout the entire video. And that's a whole another, what, ball of wax,
Ball of
ball of
wax. Yeah.
words.
Yeah.
But just trying to figure out what you can charge those companies. And I think it's very like amorphous because there's no set standard. So it's like whatever you can get a company to pay for a sponsored video is what you're going to make. But there are some calculations out there. So like, I don't mind sharing this, but I will charge between 4,000 to 14,000 to a sponsor for either a shout out all the way up to a dedicated video. But that's because I've calculated my average number of views and stuff like that. So it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely a game of like figuring out what you're worth, also negotiating that with brands. Cause,
Hmm.
some companies can't afford to pay what you would like to be paid if they're like either a startup or really small, maybe they're a nonprofit, things like that. So sponsorship is probably a topic for an entire other video. If you,
A total. Yeah.
there's just so much that goes into that.
We've had
But I'd say
lots
the,
of internal
yeah.
discussions in our Discord about sponsors. And Will
uh,
Johnson commented and said that he said, "Looks like I need some sponsors."
yeah. 'Cause I think most YouTube channels start out, they'll charge like 150 or $300. And you seem to make sure that you're getting paid what you think
Hmm.
you can make the company in terms of money from people clicking their link on your video.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's a whole thing. Aside from
When
sponsors, the best way that you can make money as a YouTuber is having products of your own, whether that's physical merch, which I want to do eventually, or having like a course if you're an educational channel. So yeah, this is just based off of seeing all the full-time YouTubers that like we know, they all have courses. There's no exception because you can just make more money. And like maybe people don't like us talking about how we need to make money, but we need to make money because I mean, if you're working at a company, yeah, they're paying you a paycheck. You don't have to worry about that side, but like they're trying to get customers to
Hmm.
pay the company money and then they pay you. So it's kind of the same thing, except that you're your own like CEO and everything else, where you need to find your customers and you need to give them something that will, give value to their lives and make their lives better in some way through buying your course. So yeah, people don't like to talk about it sometimes, but I mean, we can't pay our bills if we're not making money as content creators. And I personally would rather make people's individual lives better directly through teaching them web development than me working at an advertising agency and making some company more money
More
to
money.
buy
Yeah.
their, I don't know, pizza or whatever. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. It's totally fair. I think especially not being a content creator, it's so easy to just take all the free content that there is and just expect everything to be free. And so like you talk about having sponsors and you talk about doing courses. That's in addition to like I don't know how often you post specifically, but like all of the videos that are on your YouTube channel are free, right? Like there's hours and
Mhm.
hours and hours of content that is completely free. And that's where people that do content creation well, they earn trust, I think, first and foremost. Like they provide value, and through that value, they earn trust to the point where when you get something that's paid, they know what they're going to get. They know who they're getting it from. They know they can trust the value that they'll get out of it, which makes them likely to pay. And not just that they're able to pay, that they're almost excited to pay. Like they're happy to support you because they know they're going to get the value and they kind of know you not on a personal level, but they're connected to you from the content that they've watched over time.
For sure. Yeah. I think, and again, like I'm happy if people only watch my free videos on YouTube. Like that's perfectly fine with me. But yeah, it's great I just turned on YouTube members recently and
Hmm,
I've gotten like a few members supporting me and they're
nice.
not really getting a ton in return, but
Yep.
it's just nice to see that people actually appreciate your free content and want to support you in some way.
Yeah, that's like the Prime subscribers on here. Like I make a few bucks every once in a while on Twitch. It's certainly not in a source like a legitimate source of income, but it is nice. And I think the YouTube space would be similar. I've tried to do this more on Hashnote articles. They have a pay like a support the creator, and I've tried to add a
Oh,
few
cool.
there, which is pretty neat. Yeah, there's a thinking about sponsors. I'm bouncing around a little bit. There's a question from Weston of do you approach sponsors or do they reach out to you?
I personally am not reaching out to sponsors actively myself, mainly because I'm trying to finish my course.
Yeah,
And I have not put my email on my YouTube channel because I don't want to get like a ton of emails. So right now, I just sponsors have reached out to me via Twitter or Instagram DM, but in the future, I might sort of open that up and try to more actively find sponsors. So it can go either way.
yeah. I've done both. I my email is on my YouTube channel, so I get a lot of ones that I am not necessarily excited about, which I more or less just ignore because it's impossible. Like
Yeah.
from a business perspective, it's impossible for me to have conversations with all of these. Um,
What
so
what
yeah,
percentage would you say of people who email you do you actually end up working with?
very like 5% maybe. Like
Yeah.
it's really low, and that's we've talked about this a little bit before too. I'm much more in a phase now where I want to specifically work with like one to two, maybe three sponsors that I really love and already would be talking about and work with them more consistently because I don't want to have to like relearn a product and I don't want to have to like prepare
Yeah.
another specific demo. Like I want to work with people that I'm already excited about and that already like either know the product or I'll be excited to learn more about the product.
That's awesome. Yeah, having an ongoing sponsorship like collaboration is I think really good for both sides cuz
Hmm.
then you don't have to have the hassle of the onboarding and everything.
Yep. And it's I think like there's some sort of research in like the developer relations, developer advocacy space of like before people really become a customer of yours or like they really buy into you, they have to have had like 10 different touch points. They have to have seen a
Hmm.
tweet that you did. They have to have seen three different videos. They have to have seen blah blah blah. So like continuing to provide that value to them then brings them in. And so like if people trust me and they hear me talk about a sponsor multiple times, now they're starting to pay more attention. So I think that's part of the benefit too from their perspective
Hmm.
of working with them longer term.
Nice.
Are you? I think our calendar invite originally was up until now. So we can totally call it. If you have a few minutes, we can do a few more questions, but it's totally up to you.
Yeah, I have time, so no worries about going over.
Cool. I'll try to keep it in the next 8 minutes or so. I think Roberta Bulls had asked like, what's next for you? Anything exciting that you want to share that you're working on? Hint, I there is.
Um, yeah, we were chatting earlier, but yeah, right now we are working on an office setup tour video. I know it sounds very cliched for YouTube, but I'm getting a lot of comments about people are asking for an office tour. So I guess, got to make one of those. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. We're going to include some sort of fun video game elements in the video just to make it add a little bit of spice. So it's going to take a lot of work on my husband's side for the production and editing and animation stuff, but I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be really cool.
I'm looking forward to that as well. I haven't done like a detailed office tour thing, and I think it again. That's one of those like personal connections, right? Like if you know a little bit of the behind the scenes with the person for the content that you're watching, it makes it that much more impactful. Um, are you so you and you mentioned also working on a course. Do you have anything you want to share with that?
Oh, sure. Is this the self-promotion segment of the show?
This is I do lots of promotion for whoever is a guest
Thank
and
you.
or people that are in the chat. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's too much good stuff out there not to share.
Um, yeah, so I'm working on a course, responsive design for beginners. It's basically if you know kind of the basic HTML and CSS, I'll show you step by step how to build this website that I've designed, and it's just really meant to help you see how these skills that you've learned, maybe in tutorials or whatever, can be applied in the real world. Because I spent many years of my life building websites from design, so something that I'm very, very comfortable doing, and I think it's something that I can sort of help other people learn how to do. So if you're interested, the link's at coder-coder.com/responsive. And it's linked in all my socials also.
Okay. I'm going
Are you
to
checking out my landing page?
mainly not to judge it, but to get the to get the link. So
Yeah.
coder-coder.com
Yeah.
slash responsive.
Hmm.
So question about this, like as you're thinking about from again like a business perspective or just like what all goes into it, what are some of the behind the scenes things that you've had to do for this? And I'll give you a couple of ideas that maybe you can respond to. This is a little bit different, like laying out a course structurally versus doing a one-off video or even a longer video on YouTube. So there's probably some differences there. Are there any specific things you did for planning? Did you build out a newsletter so that you could communicate this from a marketing perspective? What are some of the additional things that go into that other than just actually recording the videos and having them live?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot. One is that I'm hosting the course on Teachable. So that means that I get my own little subdomain, and there's a lot of other things. I think Podia, I think you're
Hmm.
using or other
Yep.
people are using. So there's a few different platforms for hosting courses. I'm using them. And then I do have an email list that I try to send updates on the course every few weeks or so. So I recently I made a Trello board showing my progress in creating the different modules of the course. And I shared that publicly with my list to try to create a little bit more accountability.
Hmm.
But it's definitely been a learning experience, just balancing creating regular content on YouTube with working on this course. Um, in terms of the content itself, it is a little bit different from, say, if you've seen my Build a Website series on YouTube, where that's kind of more like live coding, where I just kind of like do it and then figure things out on the way. This course is meant to be a lot more structured. So you'll miss the sort of making mistakes researching part, but I feel like for a course, you don't necessarily want that because you're really just there to learn the actual skills. So I'm being a little bit more structured and organized in terms of wanting to hit all these specific skills. Like, for example, I'll show people how to build like the top navigation bar using Flexbox and using Grid. And I do that for a couple of things
Oh, nice.
just so people can see and compare, when you'd use either.
Cool.
So things like that. It's just more
Yeah.
planned.
Yep. That's awesome. Um, I signed up. I had not signed up for
Oh, thank
updates,
you.
so I'm on the newsletter. I'd love to whatever obviously I can do to help promote it when it's live. Let me know, and maybe we
Yeah.
could work to do a giveaway for someone on Twitch or something. Like we can talk
Mhm.
about that. But anyway, I can support when
Oh,
it's
cool.
live or building up to it. Let me know.
Thank you.
There's a comment in the chat from I don't know if you speak any Spanish. I speak relatively good Spanish, although I read more than speak. But Dryalitas says hi from Bolivia. Lo sigo a ambos, which means I follow you both, which is cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Um, and then they added a front end mentor IO link
Oh,
for
yeah. Love
premium.
front end mentor.
Yeah. Oh, and then Faku from Argentina, who I assume this is Faku, my teammate at Auth0. I don't know for sure, but I assume it is because we've got a Faku from Argentina, so I assume that's him. So welcome. Um, on the so you do is your newsletter like tied to Teachable? Is it powered through Teachable or is that something else?
It is through ConvertKit,
Okay,
but they have an integration, so they can sort of ConvertKit and Teachable can work together for stuff. But
cool.
yeah, I do. Yeah, it's a little expensive. I think right now it's like $99 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, hopefully it'll sort of pay for itself later on. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
see. We'll see.
Yep, that's so I pay for Podia and it's $80 a month and that has like all the course hosting and I can do affiliates and things, which is great. It also includes email, although the email that they have is not very customizable in terms of like what you can send. So I'm using that just because I'm already paying for Podia, but I'm starting to look into potential other options, but I still don't want to pay because I'm cheap. So Jesse from the Co-Stacker channel, he's using I think Review, which was bought by Twitter, and it's a free. I don't know any other details other than this, but he's using it for his newsletter for free, and so I've been kind of curious to look into that. But then you have the difficulty of the integration or lack thereof with Podia directly to Review, and how do you synchronize that audience and stuff. So this is like admin slash technical like busy work or logistical work that has to be figured out with those sort of details too.
Yeah, I think that was one reason why I chose ConvertKit, because I was using MailChimp for my email before, but they didn't have a direct integration with Teachable. So I would have had to use a Zapier thing
Mm-hmm.
to integrate them, which you pay like, can't remember. It's like, I don't know, 50
15 to
cents
20
per,
bucks.
yeah,
Yeah,
per
a month.
transaction,
Yeah.
per like action. And like, I definitely didn't want to do that. So I think for the integration, also Teachable will do, they'll handle your VAT
Mm-hmm.
taxes for Europe stuff and also sales tax. So I think just for the hassle that I don't have to deal with, it's been worth it for me at least, because I hate doing paperwork.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That going back to actually going back to taxes, you mentioned quarterly taxes. I don't pay quarterly taxes, and what my accountant, which I feel like I need to check with him now again, he basically said it would be like, and it has been the last couple of years, like $100 fee on top of like my regular taxes. So I save all my money
Okay.
for my taxes, and then so far it's been like $100 fee. I'm hoping that I don't get screwed in 5 years, like you said, and there's a lot more. So I may need to double check with him because I just figured I'll pay the $100 and not worry about it until like just right when I'm actually filing all my taxes. But I guess I need to
Um,
double check on that
the fees for the $100 is for your accountant or for the IRS?
for the IRS. So
Hmm.
I don't know that number. I think that number was like he said a standard fee, not necessarily associated with a percentage of how much money I made.
Hmm.
Um, so that has been the case, and I'm hoping it stays that
Oh,
way.
okay. Are you making more than like $500 a year from
Yeah.
content creation?
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know. I can't give financial advice,
I
but
know
I've never
where.
heard of
Yeah.
that before.
Yep. Fair enough. And that's like I I have enough. respect for you that that has now made me think I should double check. But this is, I think this is the epitome of like now, like I'm a business owner to a certain extent, right? Like I don't do it full time, but I own a business
Mhm.
that generates money, and I'm not a business person by trade. So these are all the details that like have to be figured out at some point. So there's just a lot that goes into it overall.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely.
We'll see. In 5 years, I might go bankrupt from taxes. Hopefully not. We'll see. I'll double
Yeah.
check on that. Yeah. Um, one additional comment, and I think we're probably good to wrap up. That Robert
Mhm.
Table says from reading your landing page that the purchase parity, which is great. So purchase parity, for people who don't know, is like you'll be able to adjust the cost of your application based on the cost of living, or I don't know what the specific number is, but basically cost of living from where they're buying. So you can adjust that to make it reasonable for people in different countries.
Mhm.
So that section, and then the who is this course not for? He says that both of those sections are amazing, and really glad that you added those. And I think that's a really good
Oh.
thing for course
Mm.
descriptions, to make sure that like if people are investing in it, they know that it is for them or not for them, so that they don't get any surprises by the time they get in there and have a bad experience. So I think you're doing a good job of, and to his point, of just setting people up for success for hopefully enjoying the content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely don't want people to sign up for my course unless they're actually going to really benefit from it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think I have more of a put a bottleneck at the beginning kind of thing. So like for
Yeah.
my, this is getting off topic, but for my email newsletter, I don't do things like a lead magnet or freebie to try to get people to sign up. I only get people to sign up if they want to receive updates about either my new videos or about the course. So, and it also makes things a bit cheaper for me on the
Mm,
paying for a convert
yep.
kit side of things. So I would rather have a smaller list of people who are way more invested.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's fair. It definitely, like, some of the perspective could be just a numbers game, because
For
it's
sure.
hard to completely know how engaged people would be. So I have a few. My newsletter is still, um, I would think, relative to a lot of other content creators, not that big. I think I'm at like 4,000, a little bit over 4,000.
Hmm.
And I know some people have 20 and 30 and 50 and 100 in their newsletters. Um, but I do have a couple of lead magnets, and have been thinking about doing more of that to get people
Mhm.
involved. But what I don't have, and this is like my 90% brain of like not wanting to dive into too much details all the time because I get overwhelmed. I don't really have a ton of research to show the impact of the stuff that I send out. Like I can look at open rate and click rate and that sort of stuff, but I haven't really
Okay.
looked in detailed enough to make assumptions on how I should structure or change things or keep them, and decide that they're working. So that's, again, there's infinite aspects of content creation that come into play as you're trying to do it, especially as you go full time.
Yeah, there's so many moving parts. I sort of like it though. I like having to do these different things. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, agreed. It is fun, and I think you just get that varied experience that you wouldn't necessarily get working a full time job. So it is fun to build up those other skill sets, but definitely overwhelming for me at times too. um, cool. Well, that's all. I think that's all the questions that we have in the chat. One last comment from Robert Tables, who says, "Jessica, you've been a fantastic guest. Agreed. Hope to see you back sometime, and I'm really excited to see what you're making and will make. Thank you so much for your time." Um,
Awesome. Thank you.
Memphis Handle says that seems like we covered everything that they wanted to know. Cheers. Ellie or Eli, I'm so sorry. Tell me one more time. I say one more time. I will probably forget, but I promise I try. Tell me which one of those pronunciations is correct. But they say thank you, Jessica and James. Penidax says thank you, Jessica. This is, by the way, for your benefit. This has been like the most active chat. I've had a hard time keeping up with the
Oh,
chat that I've had in a while. So this is a really good sign. This is great.
yay.
Yeah. And it's
Awesome.
Eli.
It's been really fun.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. I won't be too cheesy, but I have a lot of respect for so many people in Discord, specifically you and your channel and the content that you've created. And so it is, I don't know. Our community, I think, is just so great that we're so open and able to help each other and have conversations like this. So I appreciate you coming on and answering not only my questions, which I had plenty myself, but also the questions of all the people that are in the chat.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I would love to come back sometime.
Cool. Well, I will. I guess I'll have to figure that out. How to do like recurring guests or something.
Yeah.
I am going to raid everyone over to. I'm going to raid everyone over to InstaFluff. Are you familiar with raiding in Twitch?
Yeah, I believe you just sort of make all your viewers go to their
Yep.
channel. That's
Yep.
cool. Yeah.
Um, it had like I've gotten some really big raids in the past, which is especially as you're like early on is just really neat. So I'm gonna kick off that raid. My computer honestly runs so slow when I'm streaming that this will take more than the 10 seconds that it should. But a couple of additional comments. James and Jess, take care of yourself. Be safe. Thank you. Will do. Eli was saying 9 out of 10 people call me Ellie. Weston
Mm,
says thanks. That was very informative. And then I think they are supporting the decision to raid to InstaFluff channel, who's pretty awesome if you
nice.
haven't seen his stuff in the past. So we've got
Cool.
a few seconds as this counts down and should be kicking it off now. So thanks everyone for hanging out. Appreciate it. Thanks Jessica for joining, and we'll
Yeah.
talk to you all later.
Thanks for having me.